During a breezy summer afternoon in June, the Redwood Parks Conservancy, Save the Redwoods League, California State Parks Foundation, and Tolowa Dee-ni Nation came together to celebrate Tvm-chaa-me Day as part of the second annual California State Parks Week. Tvm-chaa-me is the Tolowa name for the Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park day use area, a gently sloping beach favored by both locals and tourists. For the first time in over 100 years, the people of the Tolowa Dee-ni Nation were able to cook salmon in the traditional way at Tvm-chaa-me. They also demonstrated canoe making out of fallen old-growth redwood logs. And overall, the tribe and state park staff brought home how sacred and unique this area is. Linguist, member of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act Committee, and tradition bearer in the Tolowa tribe, Lauren Nalashne Bamalin, shares the history of Tvm-chaa-me and of his ancestors who gave it that name.
All right, Dalaha, Queenus, Tvm-chaa-me. Auntie, Tvm-chaa-me.
Tvm-chaa-me.
Okay, that's where you are, Tvm-chaa-me. Okay? And of course, it's the DAU swim area now. But the traditional name for it is Tvm-chaa-me. And welcome to here. So, growing up as a young kid, on the river and stuff, I grew up on the Smith River at a village location named Neely Chunda, and I had some older uncles. They were born around 1900 to 1910 in that generation, and they spoke our language, and they shared a lot of information with us. And so every time we travel somewhere, they'd point out, well, right there, so right here, this place is named Tvm-chaa-me. And so Tvm-chaa means the deep water place. So you can see that the river comes down and it plows into these boulders the wintertime and makes a beautiful deep hole. Tvm-chaa-me means in this location. And so this historically for thousands of years actually is a place for coming to procure food. So people would come in from the coast to come to the Smith River to get food, because out on the ocean you've got ocean stuff, ocean food, ocean fish and animals and all those kinds of things, but you didn't have salmon out there. So they would come over this ridge right here, and they would camp all through this part of the world right here, and then procure fish for the fall, okay, and then put that away for the winter. And also you get acorns up here at that time. They would get huckleberries at that time, and just harvest a lot of things from the earth. And so that's what this area was used for again, thousands of years. Right over here by the Interpretive Center across the highway, on the west of there across the road, is our oldest known site today. It dates back about a total of 10,000 years. Wow. So that's quite a chunk of time. There's a little book out there about steelhead fishing on the Smith River, and it says we've been here about 1,000 years in that book. Where that number came from is a mystery to me, but
It's a typo.
Oh, they left the zero off. Okay, that explains it. Okay, the importance of a zero, right? Yeah. So it's been a long time that we've been around in this part of the world, and I do believe that archaeological evidence has been discovered here, as you would expect, and so forth. So this area right here. So we're at Ha-yu-chik. Oh, and the word Ha-yu-chik became the English word Haichi. So Ha-yu means of an upper status, and Chik means stream. So just up from Chansustan was another town by more like where the cafe is, right there. So that's Ha-yu-chik. Ha-yu. So like when we say like a head person, we say Hush Ha-yu, a human of high status. And so this is the same expression being used here to interpret that. And the mouth of Mill Creek, which is a beautiful stream that runs down, is really well known for Chinook salmon. Hopefully the populations continue to grow. At the mouth of that is Sha-me, and that was the main camp area as well for all the Crescent City folks to come over the ridge to get the salmon. so what else can I share with you? The last Tolowa to live in situ here, or in person here, was a man named Philip, and he was executed, unfortunately, in 1902. So we actually believe that when we had an archaeological sharing with UC Davis, they brought a team up here. Shannon Tushingham had a team of young folks that were in archaeology, and we together, Tolowa Dee-ni Nation, with them and Elk Valley Rancheria worked together, and we actually dug up a portion of that area, and we carbonated everything, and we found his sweat house, which is a man's residence, and it had beautiful wooden floors, it had beautiful polished stones around his fireplace, and it was really wonderful because he was, all Indians, of course, at that period, of course, would have to know how to knap arrowheads, right? So his knappings were made from obsidian and also green glass. So that means he lived into the historic period, right? So there's evidence of that. He actually had a little wooden stove in there. All was left was one leg of it. The rest had all rusted away. And then we did, finally we were digging up, going upriver direction, and we finally found a human being. So as soon as we found the skull, we were done. No more, that's a grave. And of course, the coroner had to come and verify if it was like a murder, or it was an ancient grave. So there were towns all the way up to Smith, and then as we go down the river, towns clear down the mouth and along the coastline of this area. And we guesstimate, looking at demography studies, that the Tolowa Dee-ni population of the entire region was around 10,000 folks. And so, and then this region that we lived in from Sixes River on the coast in Oregon all the way to Wilson Creek, California, down here, and inland to the watershed of the Applegate River and the the lower Rogue River portion of the Rogue River, was around 10,000 folks. And that area, all that area was broken into governance districts called Yuk-e, and the Yuk-e is your domain area, I tried to get an equal concept of a European model, so maybe like a kingdom or a fiefdom kind of an idea. And each area had a capital and had head people, and then it had a military force that used to protect themselves, and also do massive expeditions and so forth like that. So this one here belongs to Cayuchi, does belong to the Crescent City one. So the Crescent City one is named Ta'atan. And Ta'atan then owned this area clear up to the south fork of the Smith River, including the entire drainage past Big Flat and Black Hawk's Bar and all that area there. And then all the water flowing off that basin comes into South Fork. Well, that was all belonged to Ta'atan, and so on. And the land was divided this way all over in this part of the world. And we all spoke one language, it's the Dene language. But there were dialects in it, and even though they were mutually intelligible dialects, just by speaking, a person would know exactly where you were from. Oh, you're from Ta'atan, you're from Pawanput, you're from you'd be from Yanshu Cheat, like the Rogue River. They knew exactly just how you spoke, even though it was the same language. But that was around 10,000 folks, back at, I think at probably the peak of the population that we could guesstimation, looking at demography studies, looking at the number of villages, looking at how many houses were in those villages, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so it's a beautiful spot, great for fishing, and I think you can fish here. The state has to say about that. But you can definitely hike here, that's for sure, and swim and camp out and have barbecues. And just wanted to get up here and share a little history with you about us being here for quite a long time. And I always try to get the kids, I was a former teacher, so I said, well, now, how old are the pyramids, And who was the first culture that had a written language? Oh, the Chinese, okay, and then, well, how old is that? 6,000 years, okay. So this has been here 10,000 years, to try to get them an idea how long humanity has been living in this very location. It hasn't just been a mere 1,000 years, it's been a long time.
Along with the background on Tvm-chaa-me, the day's events included an old-growth redwood canoe exhibit, where we watched the tribe's young men start to form a canoe by chipping away at the center of a redwood log, provided by the parks, to reach its heart.
The canoe is built, it starts as a whole log, and then the log is split in the middle. The bottom of the canoe canoe is the heart of the tree. This log that's to start this little bitty canoe was actually twice this big. This is half of it. Wow. And I can't honestly tell you why, but I believe it's the density of the heart creates a better center of gravity, which keeps it from rolling and stuff. It's impossible to sink one. I have one that has been cracking, you can still paddle it, because it's like cork material on a wine bottle. No matter how small you break it, it'll float. So even if you shot holes in it, it's going to float. If it rolls over, it floats.
There are only a few canoe builders left, with the youngest being in his 60s. As this generation ages, the challenge of keeping this tradition alive becomes more difficult. And without access to these logs, the knowledge of canoe making can't be passed down. For now, the next generation of canoe makers will need to rely on the parks to provide fallen logs to use. In the past, every household would have a canoe, and they would work together to shape it. A man who didn't come from wealth could spend 15 years fishing and hunting for the family to pay for his own canoe. Building knowledge and community through preserving, cooking, and sharing food is another integral part of Tolowa culture. The meal shared on Tvm-chaa-me Day gave the community a taste of what they have been making for generations. The salmon and sturgeon that were cooked on the bank of the Smith River also came with sand bread. Traditionally made with acorn flour, this was one way they made bread.
So this fire, this is gravel. It's called sand bread in English, but I don't know why, because it's really, there's no sand involved. But right? They're cooking that in the sand. But so this is all like pea-sized gravel, we call it. And this is the same gravel that when we move to camp every year to harvest this chunch or the smelt, this is the same gravel that the smelt are spawning in. So that's kind of just interesting, I always thought. But you build this, put the fire, so Marva had this fire going by 8 o'clock this morning. Yeah. So this has been cooking for, what is that, 5.5 hours in?
Oh.
5.5 hours getting hot. And you basically heat it so this gravel cooks all the way through just like an oven.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then you rake the fire to that side because you don't want any of the coals or, you know, anything like that in there. And I just make a little hole. And it's a test game, right? So when you first start, it's hot. And then, yeah. And then it's going to cool down. So this is probably the last round I'll do on this side, which might be pushing it.
Okay. But then you'll just flip the coals to the other side?
Exactly.
Cool.
And then that will come on this side, reheat this side, and I'll cook over there, and you just keep going back and forth until it's done. I think there's a lot of important reasons, but like Nisha was saying, she's been taught by like her, you know, elders that came before her, so it's like that. There's a transmission of knowledge that is handed down with cooking. Mm-hmm. And I think each family is probably just slightly unique. I think there's a lot of nutritional and health values to it also. But for me, it's really this, like sitting around with everybody and the kids. Well, you can tell our kids, look at it, right? Bread, jam, butter. Hi, how are you? And so I think there's a lot more than just the actual eating part of it that builds the community and the knowledge and all of that goes with it.
The way that we traditionally bless food in the bigger macro view of the world is we do it through ceremony. So we do have annual ceremony to thank creation, to thank creators for making this beautiful place to live and produce all the food and all the items we need to survive and live here and live well in this ancient land of ours. So we do that at ceremony. And then now we also like to do something, it's immediate. So that's kind of a blend kind of a thing. It works, and we've been doing it for this way for a long time. So what I'll do is just give some thanks to Mother Earth and the great things that she does for us every day. If you think about it, we breathe her air and we drink her water, and she fills our bodies with food we need, and she takes care of us, and she loves us. Okay, so with that, I'll talk about that. Daloha, Kwatle Shum, Yakhai, Cha-me Nation, Kui Tai Nu Hua Sagut An Shut Nu Hua Ningla, Tvm-chaa-me we shri nishta nu hua gai ni he won shu ag it hot he won nu shit khan wa ele le what nation shoot nu hua nin la we nu te we ta shoot nu hua sa gut on shoot nu hua nin hey yo ho hum no hey yo ho heck no way ho oh heck no hey ho he hey ho no hey no hum no hey yo he heck no way ho yo he heck no hey ho hey ho no hey ho hey we now eat the cha eat on let's all eat now.
It was truly heartening to see the community come to this local swimming hole and recognize the Tolowa's sacred connection to this place, a place that has been known as the Jed Smith State Park Day Use Area for decades. And it was empowering to experience the traditions and culture of those who will forever call this place Tvm-chaa-me.
Especially here with the partnership that we have with the local tribes, it is very important to protect these resources because we don't have many of them left. We're in a very special place. This is an old growth forest. Only 5% of that is left. And most importantly, we're on traditional Tolowa land. They've been here since time immemorial, and it's just an honor to be here to support them on their very special day.
What can people do to reach out and help protect Tvm-chaa-me?
They can connect either online, they can go to our visitor centers, Redwoods Rising, California State Parks, National Parks, Redwood National and State Parks all together, and even Redwood Parks Conservancy.